Imagine the chilling silence of a crime scene where the echoes of a horrifying act remain unanswered. Some murder cases defy explanation, their mysteries growing darker with time. In today's video, we will dive into the abyss of unsolved horror, exploring 3 of the most disturbing murder cases that continue to baffle investigators and haunt our collective conscience. Each case is a chilling testament to the fact that sometimes the true horror lies not just in the acts themselves, but in the unanswered questions that linger long after the crimes have been committed. Join me, Mr. Bizarre, as we unravel these dark enigmas and confront the unsettling reality of justice left incomplete. On the morning of January the 15th, 1947, a young mother and her child were out for a walk in Los Angeles when they stumbled upon a disturbing sight that would soon become one of the most infamous scenes in American crime history. Lying in a vacant lot was the naked body of a woman, horrifically mutilated and bisected at the waist. Bisected meaning that her entire body had been savagely sawn into 2 pieces. The victim was soon identified as Elizabeth Short, a 22-year-old aspiring actress who had posthumously become known as the Black Dahlia. The grisly nature of her murder, coupled with the media frenzy that followed, has etched this case into the annals of unsolved mysteries. Elizabeth's body, upon further inspection, appeared to have been carefully posed, her severed halves displayed with almost surgical precision, and her face had been grotesquely slashed from the corners of her mouth toward her ears, creating a macabre Glasgow smile. The brutality of the crime shocked even the most seasoned detectives, and the investigation quickly became a sensation. The press, eager for a story, dubbed her as the Black Dahlia, and reporters began to spin lurid tales of Elizabeth's life. She was transformed from a young woman trying to make it in Hollywood to a figure shrouded in scandal and mystery. The LAPD was inundated with false confessions and wild speculation. Over 150 suspects were considered, from doctors to petty criminals, and each adding another layer of intrigue and confusion to the already convoluted case. Yet, despite the exhaustive efforts, the truth of who really killed Elizabeth Short and why still remains elusive. The investigation was marred by sensationalism and the potential mishandling of evidence, which leads some to believe that the killer might have been someone with connections to law enforcement, perhaps in the force themselves, or maybe powerful figures in Los Angeles. In this next case, things take a turn for the more gruesome, as the isolated tranquility of the Gruber family's life was cut short with unimaginable violence, leaving only unanswered fears. In the cold, unforgiving winter of 1922, on a remote farmstead in Hinterkaifeck, Germany, the Gruber family met a fate so brutal it has haunted the imaginations of countless souls. The family's farmhouse, once alive with the sounds of everyday life, became a silent witness to unspeakable horror. 6 members of the Gruber family, including a young child, were savagely murdered, their bodies left to rot, unseen and undiscovered for days. In the weeks leading up to the massacre, strange and unsettling events began to unfold. Andreas Gruber, the family patriarch, noticed mysterious footprints in the snow leading up to the house, yet none leading away. Keys began to go missing, and unfamiliar newspapers appeared on the property. The family heard strange noises in the attic, but found nothing upon investigation. Despite these ominous signs, the Grubers continued with their daily routines, unaware of the lurking danger. What they didn't realize was that the strange happenings were signs of something far more sinister, an intruder was living among them, hidden in the dark corners of their home, creeping silently through the attic and watching their every move. As they went about their lives, this unseen presence stalked them, biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to carry out the horrific act he had likely been planning. On the night of March 31st, 1922, the unknown assailant struck. What followed was more than just murder. It was a display of unrestrained brutality. One by one, the family members were lured to the barn, where the killer unleashed a horrifyingly savage attack. Armed with a mattock, he bludgeoned his victims with a level of violence beyond comprehension. Their skulls were shattered and their faces beaten into a bloody, unrecognizable pulp. The blows were relentless, continuing long after each victim had stopped breathing, long after their bodies had ceased to struggle. This was not just the act of someone simply intending to kill. It was a vicious destruction of human life. The killer's frenzied assault turned the barn into a scene of unimaginable gore, where flesh and bone were obliterated beyond recognition. The sheer savagery suggested that, whatever his motivation, the killer was looking to do more than just murder the family. He carried out the attack in such an inhuman and grotesque way, it defies our understanding. After slaughtering the 4 family members in the barn, the killer stacked their bodies upon one another and covered them with hay, leaving them to decompose. He then entered the farmhouse to finish off his grim work. Inside, the maid and 2-year-old Joseph were still in their beds, unaware of the horror that had unfolded outside. The killer again showed no mercy. Using the same mattock, he brutally murdered them as they slept. Maria's skull was crushed, and little Joseph's head was smashed in, his small, fragile body left broken in the cradle. The level of violence was shocking. It was as if the killer wanted to obliterate any trace of their existence. Blood splattered the walls and soaked into the sheets, turning the once peaceful home into a nightmarish slaughterhouse. The rooms, once filled with life, now held the stench of death, a putrid odour that would soon alert the neighbours to the unspeakable acts committed there. What makes the Hinterkaifeck murders particularly horrifying is not just the brutality of the killings, but what happened afterward. For days, the killer remained on the property, living among the corpses, eating the family's food, and even tending to the livestock. Smoke was seen rising from the chimney, and the animals were fed, giving the illusion that life on the farm continued on as normal. All the while, the bodies lay rotting, maggots crawling through the wounds. It wasn't until days later, when concerned neighbours noticed the eerie silence and foul stench of decay, that the horror was uncovered. The sight that met them was one of pure nightmare. Bloated, pale and decomposing bodies stacked in the barn, their faces unrecognizable and the ground stained with their blood. The house, which once echoed with the sounds of family life, now stood silent, scarred by violence and death. Despite exhaustive investigations and countless interviews, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved to this day, and the identity of the killer and their motives are still shrouded in mystery. For our final story, the YOGTZE case is yet another unsolved murder that has baffled countless investigators with its cryptic messages, and is perhaps the weirdest one yet. Gunther Stoll, an unemployed food engineer, had a history of paranoia and had often spoken of being followed or watched by unknown entities. His friends and family were aware of his erratic behaviour, but it had never escalated to anything violent or dangerous. Stoll was known to be anxious and at times fearful, But these episodes were usually dismissed as the ramblings of a troubled mind. He had not been officially diagnosed with any mental illness, leading many to believe that these were just mere figments of his imagination. Until, that is, the events of October 1984. On this fateful day, the German town of Unsolved became the centre of one of the most perplexing and disturbing cases in recent history. Gunther Stoll was found dead under bizarre circumstances that continue to haunt the public to this very day. This incident, known as the YOGTZE case, revolves around the cryptic message Stoll left behind and the horrifying nature of his death. In the hours leading up to his demise, Stoll exhibited increasingly erratic behaviour. On the night of October 25th, he abruptly explained, "Now I've got it." As if a dark realization had struck him, he then scribbled the mysterious sequence YOGTZE on a piece of paper, a haunting code that has never been deciphered. Moments later, Stoll left his home in a rush and headed to his favourite pub, seemingly in a state of panic. Inside, he suffered a sudden and unexplained collapse, hitting the floor as if something unseen had struck him down. Although he wasn't intoxicated, Stoll lost consciousness and eventually stumbled out of the pub, dazed and disorientated. Climbing into his VW Golf, Stoll drove aimlessly, visiting his childhood home. There, he found an old acquaintance and spoke of a horrible incident that he believed was imminent. But when his acquaintance urged him to seek safety at his parents' home, Stoll refused, muttering that they wouldn't understand. Instead, he set off into the night, his mind seemingly consumed by the cryptic thoughts that plagued him. At around 3 a.m, truck drivers discovered Stoll's car in a trench beside the A45 highway, about 100 kilometers from where he was last spotted. What they found was beyond shocking. Stoll lay naked and severely injured in the passenger seat, his body bruised and battered. Blood stained the interior of the car, and Stoll's pale skin was marred with gashes and contusions, as if he had been in a violent struggle. He managed to mutter a few incoherent words, mentioning 4 unknown men who had been in the car with him but had fled the scene. These mysterious figures were never identified, leaving behind unanswered questions. The scene suggested a sinister series of events. Stoll had been struck by a vehicle, his bones shattered, and then placed in the passenger seat of his own car, left to die. The car's damage was inconsistent with the crash site, hinting that the vehicle had been staged. Witnesses reported seeing a lone figure in a white jacket near to the crash site, but this lead only turned cold, adding to the mystery. Stoll tragically died shortly after being taken to a local hospital, and so, without Stoll around to tell his tale, we will never truly know what happened that night. The cryptic message and the bizarre events leading up to his death weave a chilling tale of confusion and secrecy. The true meaning of the message remains undiscovered, as does the identity of his attackers. So that's it for tonight's bizarre video. I hope you enjoyed it, and yes, I am back posting on this channel, and I have big plans for it. So subscribe if you haven't already, and do turn on notifications so you don't miss any future bizarre videos. Thanks for watching, and good night.